Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about using ASO synergies to skyrocket your growth. If you're not familiar with what ASO stands for, it's App Store Optimization. You know, all those apps that you're seeing on mobile devices. And if you don't have an app, it's okay. You'll learn from this presentation on A, what you can do, but B, why you should have one and some of the numbers around how much potential revenue it's driving for the overall market. So I'm Neil Patel. I'm the co-founder of NP Digital. We're a global ad agency in 20-something countries at this point. And today we have Arazu and Mick from Yodel, which is our mobile optimization division. And do you guys want to give a quick introduction of yourselves?
Hey, yes, thanks, Neil. So I'm Mick. I've been in the app space now for about 18 years. One of the very first, and you know, I like the phrase a pioneer in the space. So looking forward to sharing some of my insight and thoughts across today.
Thanks so much, Neil. Hi, guys. I'm Arazu. I am the agency growth director at Yodel Mobile. Not as seasoned as Mick. I'm only in my 9th year in the Yodel agency and NP agency, but 10 years in the mobile and app industry, and hopefully going to share some very practical tips and tricks on how you can leverage ASO to drive your growth.
All right, so as I mentioned, we're in 28 plus countries. We have a lot of awards. We just won, I think, 2 awards yesterday. I got texted while I was on my flight. I think Performance Marketing Agency of the Year or International Agency of the Year. Colin would know better, which I think this is our 3rd year in a row for us, so that's amazing. And the Yodel team, you guys won an award as well, I believe, for...
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we were lucky enough to pick up, it was the Mobile and App Award for the best campaign for a client of ours called TUI, who are a British and European holiday company.
Cool. So as I mentioned, the reason we're winning, or we have these awards, which I mentioned, but the reason we're winning the awards is for the results. And today, when we break down what we're seeing with app stores and apps and how you need to optimize, it's not coming from a place of our gut feeling. It's coming from a place of experience, data, and insights on what's actually working for our customers. The big thing that people make a mistake on is these little devices that I'm holding up account for 61% of global traffic, literally 61%. But where they get wrong, and you'll see in the upcoming slides, is how they're actually visiting websites, web pages, or interacting with companies. See, 97.8% of the world's population uses these devices. Can you guys go to the next slide, Barbara? And where people actually get it wrong is right here in this chart. 90% is spent on in-app. So it's not actually someone going to a Chrome browser and typing in www. whatever it may be. They're going literally to the App Store, downloading apps, using these apps on a regular basis. In essence, again, key point here, even though the majority of traffic on the internet is mobile, 90% of mobile time is spent in apps. This is why companies need apps, and they make a big mistake if they don't have one. And mobile is a key for user engagement. If you look at in 2024, revenue from in-app purchases and subscriptions have been continually growing at a rapid pace, 30% year over year, globally to $150 billion. It's a massive amount of money. However, app users are becoming more expensive and harder to acquire because companies are starting to really see that it's a lucrative channel that they need to be on. And when you look at acquisition costs for different regions or different platforms, more so, Facebook, right, you're seeing $2 to $5.5, TikTok, 1.75 to 4, Google, 1.55 to 4.5. It all really adds up. It's not cheap. And we're seeing these numbers continually rise year over year. We don't really see them going lower. And campaign performance is actually becoming harder to track because people always say don't track or don't share data, which is why 65% of attribution data for iOS devices is restricted. And you're going to start seeing more and more restrictions on data for both Android and Apple devices over the years because privacy laws have been getting more strict, not more lenient from what we've seen. You're also seeing the app stores becoming more complex. So in some cases, you're seeing decreases in searches, but increase in activity of users going to the app store because they're highlighting different things versus just dropping people into search. And this is still causing more searches because if there's more activity and only a 2% decrease in search, but a 12% increase in total activity, you know, just like Google search, when people like, oh, the amount of clicks going to your website are decreasing because majority of the clicks don't happen or don't go off Google anymore. That is true, but the other side of the argument that a lot of people don't talk about is Google's went from, call it 8-ish billion searches a day to 13.7 billion searches a day, right? If you look at it on an annual basis, they're doing over 5 trillion searches. So yes, people percentage-wise of each search are getting less clicks to a website, but because there's so many more searches in total, it's still driving a lot of volume. And you're seeing the same thing with the App Store. But when you're doing App Store marketing, you can't do a fragmented approach. A fragmented approach will just cost you a lot of money. And here's a great example of this. When you look at paid and organic, right, there is cannibalization, but if you do things right, you can actually make it where you're not cannibalizing, you're not, costing yourself more money. We see this with traditional Google ads as well. At NPD, one thing that we do is when no one else is bidding on your ad and you're number one organically, we turn off the paid ads. The moment people start bidding on your ads, we turn them back on because the last thing you want to do is cannibalize your organic listings. But in essence, they need to work hand in hand. If they're not working hand in hand, your results aren't going to be as good for how much you're spending. App users are also harder to retain in today's world. There's so many more choices versus when the App Store first came out. When you look at iOS specifically, retention's around 10% after 30 days. It's not that much better on Android devices either. So not only do you have to build a good app, but you got to make sure your marketing dollars are effective, because if people stop using your app, is it profitable? The last thing you want to do is burn a ton of money and be like, look at all these installs we got. But then all of a sudden, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days later, barely anyone is using it, and then your economics aren't as good. So today, what are we going to explore? Well, we'll talk about how to align App Store optimization and paid and different product strategies to continue to drive app growth. We'll share insights across different channels and how to turn performance wins into lasting compounding growth. And of course, we'll show you real life examples so that way you know what to replicate.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Neil. So I'm going to pick up here. Neil kind of touched on it. The app space now is getting so much more fragmented. There's so much more competition out there. There's so much more opportunity for us from the levers that we can pull from a marketing perspective. And we've got a very, very sophisticated consumer who knows that they're valuable. And because of all of that, having an integrated approach has become one of the most essential things that you should consider if you're actually going to be looking at app growth marketing. And I think the big challenge that most marketers face is that they think about app growth in a very siloed way. So for instance, a lot of the clients and a lot of the people that we see initially maybe just focus on paid user acquisition in terms of advertising in order to drive those downloads. Now, in doing so, they're ignoring their App Store optimization. They're ignoring the importance of the creative now that the ATT prompt is actually reducing their visibility by 65% of the available data and the individuals that are going to be opting in and giving you their data. So creative now has become essential again in terms of your user acquisition. So if you're thinking in a siloed way, you're missing out on the key point. And that key point is a very integrated, joined up solution. So this is a great snapshot of a number of the tools, a number of the levers that you could be pulling in order to drive those downloads, in order to drive those conversions, in order to drive that monetization. So for instance, ads, you're spending money on ads, not only will that actually increase the clicks through to your App Store listing, because of the algorithms that sit behind those app stores, it will also increase your organic visibility. It will also increase your category ranking. And in doing so, that will build up a greater number of installs than you're actually getting through your advertising itself. And this is a great example of that principle of marginal gains. Marginal gains is where you actually make lots and lots of little improvements weekly and monthly. It might be 1% here, it might be 2% there, but in doing that, you're actually building up those ones and twos together, can create a 15-20% increase on a month-by-month basis. And this sits at the heart of what you should be doing from an integrated strategy in the app space. And if it's all done properly, and you have a very strong strategic layout and you learn tactically to improve, it's actually going to unlock that growth on a very regular basis. And this is a good example with CBS Sport. When they ran their March Madness promotion, they changed the screenshot. They changed the screenshot listings to reflect the March Madness itself, and that actually increased their signups by 50%. So optimizing the App Store can actually increase your conversion rate by up to 150, 200%. And we've seen that time and time again with a lot of our clients. By doing that, optimizing the App Store, you're actually going to have more down funnel impact because of it. And it also improves the engagement and monetization, and ultimately, I guess, the North Star goal, which is the lifetime value of a user. And this is a great example that this is a very standard principle that developers who actually leverage the promotional content that Android provides through the App Store are seeing at least a 4% higher increase in their revenue than apps that actually don't do that. Now, Android are providing a ton of tools for us to be able to play with in terms of building out that promotional content. And I would strongly advise anybody that's in the app game to actually be focusing on those, because as you can see here, your revenue will increase. An ASO to us at Yodel sits at the heart. It's the cornerstone of any app success program. And for any of you that aren't familiar with App Store optimization, in a snapshot, it is the process of increasing the visibility of that app and ultimately the conversion to downloads of that app through the App Store listing. And why is it important? So if you think about the journey in a typical digital environment, you see a banner, you do a search, you click on that search, you click on that banner, it takes you typically directly through to the website. However, in the app space, it's very, very different. What you've got is the App Store listing, and that is both an opportunity and a threat. It's the pinch point. So as you can see from this slide, if you're getting a click through from your organic socials or your PR or your paid user activity, it goes directly through to your App Store listing. Once those individuals are on your App Store listing, they still need to press get. They still need to download the app. And once that app has been downloaded to their handset, they still need to open it and then activate it by logging in. So you've got a 5-step process rather than that 1-step process, or sorry, that 2-step process that you'd get in the digital space. And therefore your App Store listing has to be as strong and as powerful as it could possibly be. So discovering of the App Store listing is about the usage of the keywords that sit within the App Store, within the App Store listing itself, or actually within the app itself. And the key elements from an Android perspective are your title, your short description, and long description. Now, these are the areas that you actually put your keywords in, your metadata, in order to be discovered. And the most powerful of those three is the title itself. From an Apple perspective, again, your title, your subtitle, and your back-end keywords. You've only got 30 characters for your title, you've got 30 characters for your subtitle, and you've got 100 for your back-end keywords. They are the key in order to get discovered. So utilizing those, and especially your title and subtitle, will drive the highest visibility in the App Store. In addition to that, your App Store listing is going to be your conversion tool. We take a lot of our decisions by the visibility of what we see. So the images, the icon, the screenshots themselves, they have to represent what that individual is expecting when they go to that App Store listing and when they actually download the app. There has to be synergies between what they see and what they get. And ultimately, the app reviews and the ratings, the number of ratings and reviews they've got, are going to have a big impact on discoverability and conversion as well. So what I've just shown you is the very basics of ASO. If you get those right, you're on the way to actually succeeding. However, there is something that we call the ASO app growth loop. And this is where ASO not only helps with discoverability, it also shows how you can maximize the user's value through conversions and activation. So you acquire individuals through your metadata and the ASO and work that you're doing from an Apple Search Ads perspective, utilizing Apple Search Ads to test keywords. And then once those individuals have actually got into the app space themselves, things like your custom product pages and the organic custom product pages, which Apple has recently just brought to the fore, these are separate listings that are built out of your core listing that is relevant to the message that you're actually pushing. So for instance, if it was Home Depot and they were pushing a summer barbecue set and somebody searched for barbecues within the App Store, they click on the link, it takes them through to a Home Depot page, which talks primarily about the barbecues. So these are tools that you can utilize in order to drive more traffic. You activate them through the in-app events, which are the tiles within the App Store itself, and they promote the app. And it's a good way of actually bringing people back into your app, because the individuals that have already downloaded your app and you're utilizing in-app events, they will see those in-app events within the App Store itself, and it drives people back into the app. The validation comes through from your feedback and the roadmap through the videos and also the screenshots that you can see within your App Store listing. And the conversions are actually coming through in-app events and promotional content, ultimately leading to advocacy. This is where you see your app reviews and prompts. The stronger those reviews and the larger the number of those reviews you've got, the greater the algorithms will be in terms of finding your app within the App Store. And it doesn't just stop there. You can't just concentrate on getting your App Store listing through ASO correct. Things like the product, the quality of that product and the usage, the brand itself, the sentiment, the trust, the relationship that brand has built up with you as an individual, and the usage because of that, and the paid activity driving the volumes of downloads, and hopefully the quality of the user, because there's a synergy between the creative that they see in the messaging and the download. When they download the app, it's actually what they were expecting, has a very positive impact on the algorithms and ultimately creates a far greater ASO visibility for your app in the App Store.
And just keep in mind with product, we're seeing a lot of companies these days just want to pop up apps and use AI to help them create an app super quick. If your app actually sucks, it sends negative signals to these platforms and it hurts. I'm not saying don't use AI, but don't just shove out a crappy app in a very crowded market. It does not work no matter how. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how good of a marketing team you have behind us. if we ourselves promoted a really crappy app, the customer would not get the results they're looking for. We would have wasted time. The customer would have wasted money. It doesn't work. This is a super important element to App Store marketing that a lot of companies take for granted. It's the quality of your own app and the experience people have when using it.
Thank you, Neil. And that kind of pulls into the importance of your ratings and rankings. So if your app has a 4-star rank, 4 stars or more rating, that you're likely to get 7 times more keywords within the top segments of the App Store itself. And this slide, if you look at the chart on this slide, this is a really good example. You can see where from 3-star ratings up to 4.5-star ratings, the difference between 50 keywords up to 350 keywords. So getting those ratings right, and those ratings you'll get because the product is a quality product, will have a massive impact on your discoverability. And probably one of the North Star goals of any app marketer is to get featured, because if you do get featured, not only do you get a huge amount of interest and downloads, you'll also get a better chance of getting featured next time. 90% of the apps that have been featured within the last couple of years on the App Store have had a rating of 4 or more. And it's pretty similar for Google Play as well, around about 85% of those. And coming back to Neil's point, if you've got a buggy product, a product that's taking time to load, a product that's actually falling over quite a bit, it's going to get found out. And this is a great illustration of when there was an algorithm update that was intended to find apps that were actually taking time to load and fall over. As soon as that algorithm update went into play, you can see this particular app going from around about 3,000 app downloads a day down to nearly 500 a day. It has a big impact, and that was purely because of the algorithms. And it's not just about doing the right things and then putting them in place and forget about them. It's really important to be consistent in what you're doing and how often you do it. Now, 50% of the top apps within the App Store are actually updating their listings, their screenshot listings, twice a year. 30% of them are doing their description twice a year. Now, this is having an impact because it's obviously being picked up by the algorithms. However, imagine if you were doing that every month or you're doing it every 2 weeks. The impact that you're having will be building your visibility within the app stores and making sure that your app is found over and above your competition. So consistency and doing that activity at a regular time, more often than you were previously, will generate a decent impact. And I love this slide because it's a great example of how paid user acquisition, so your advertising within the app space, is actually driving organic uplifts. So you can see when the paid activity kicks in, about 7 or 8, 10 days into this campaign, the lift from organic, because of the volume of the downloads that the App Store was seeing, actually grow quite substantially. So that is a great example of how your paid user acquisition will deliver on your organic impact. Great, thanks very much. I'm going to hand over to Arazu now.
Thanks so much, Mick. So I'm going to spend the next few slides talking a little bit more practically around the tactics that you can leverage. You know, if you are the owner of the app or if your remit covers the app, it's really important that you cross-collaborate with other departments within the business to make sure that you are impacting your app performance and the growth of your product. I think just to add a layer to that, both Mick and Neil have covered the fact that the app stores really are looking at your performance very holistically. They're not just looking at what you're doing on the page, on your app store listings, product metrics, retention, revenue. all of those key factors and KPIs are read by the algorithms, because Apple and Google, they want to give visibility to products that drive revenue overall. So really and truly, a holistic approach is very important. So I'm going to cover around 5 different ways that you can start this cross collaboration to make sure that you're doing the best possible job to really implement that best practice. So the first area I want to cover is Mick covered, I guess, all the metrics associated with conversion and app reviews and ratings. And again, just to stress that point, the algorithms really do look for a certain rating, particularly within categories in terms of benchmarks, in order to unlock further visibility for your app. So we tend to say a 4.5 star rating and above is really the gold standard that you want to aim for with your products. But I think, advocates are made, they're not found. So you have to be super proactive in making sure that you are increasing not just the rating that you're getting in terms of overall rating, but also the volume and velocity of ratings and reviews, because those 2 areas are what the algorithm really considers when pushing you in and giving you further visibility in the app stores. So I think the first place to start is really aligned with your product team here, because you have probably one opportunity every few months to bring up a native app review prompt to nudge your users to get them to give you a good star rating. And you don't just want to put that in at a random place in the app journey. It's really about putting that in what we call kind of a aha moment or a delight point in the user journey to really increase the chances of that rating and review to be as positive as possible. So put it in, test it, see where that best place is, but really it should be where the user finds the most benefit in terms of using your product and your app. And if you're worried about not knowing exactly where that is, we recommend putting in push priming screens, which is essentially another screen that appears before the native review prompt comes in, to just gauge and ask the user whether they're having a good experience or a poor experience. And the benefit of that is if the user is having a poor experience, you can mitigate them airing out their qualms, I guess, on the app stores in terms of reviews and push them towards internal customer support and really protect that app store space as, a very branded space. So really work with that team to implement the app review prompt. 2 other areas that you can work on include marking reviews, particularly ones that are positive, as helpful. That tends to push those reviews to have further visibility and be more prominent within your app store listing. And then finally, respond to reviews. This is super important. And I think, for negative reviews, of course, the benefit is you are showing the user that you're really listening to them, you're taking on their feedback. And again, it's really important for your brand in general to showcase that you are really, looking to your users and looking after them. But hopefully, if you do respond to them, they might change their review, which is the key thing that you want to push for. Let them boost up the rating by showing that you're proactive and engaging with their issues. On the other side of that, another hack, I guess, within this space is that on Google Android, a lot of the reviews tend to get indexed for keywords. So really think strategically about how you're responding to those reviews and incorporate a little bit of the ASO team into how you're putting together that copy and injecting some keyword strategy whilst making it sound as authentic and natural as possible. And I think the other area in terms of reviews that can be really beneficial is that they are a treasure trove of user feedback. And this is feedback that you're getting without prompting users, without running research. So if you're starting to see trends come in within the App Store listing in terms of reviews, you can really leverage this across different parts of your ASO strategy, but also your product strategy. I've just pulled up an example here of Olio, which is an app to reduce household and food waste. And I had a quick look at their reviews. And a lot of the reviews kind of hone in on the key value propositions of what the product does. So you help reduce food waste, but also there's a bit more of an emotional element in some of the reviews, talking about how it's really good for those on a strict budget, helping make ends meet. And so you can see that Olio have actually put save money as a more prominent value proposition within their creative and stop food waste. So keep looking at your reviews to see whether some of those recurring bits of feedback can actually help you to feed into your creative messaging. On the right, I pulled out a particularly grumpy user who was pretty upset about getting vegan duplicates in his surprise bag. So I think there's two things to do here. You know, if Olio does offer the opportunity of substitutions, maybe that's something that needs to be front-loaded within the App Store experience and showcased a little bit earlier on to make sure there's no confusion in terms of what's available within the product experience. Or if this is feedback that comes up recurringly, maybe it's something to, notify the product team on and show them that this is something that users really want and start to incorporate that into your product roadmap as well. Another area that cross-collaboration is super important for, I think, is creative learnings. And if you are a product that covers multiple channels, all the way from above the line activity through to web and performance, you're probably sitting on a huge amount of information in terms of what is pushing conversion for your users, what type of imagery, which audience segments, what type of copy and tone of voice, and even creative methods are really triggering users to engage with your brand. And you want to take as much of that knowledge and information across these different departments and allow that to funnel into your App Store screenshots. I think the stat is that it takes maybe 10 seconds for a user to make a decision before they download your app. So that's such a short amount of time to push and get your, make that first impression, get the user to download, but also put in a bit of product education in there. So it's a big ask for you to be able to get that all in with, it's probably 3/4 of that first screenshot that users engage with. So really having a solid creative strategy that's informed by data is going to be really, really important. And you can see I've just used Remitly here as an example. They're particularly good at very emotive-led messaging, and they've taken different parts of their creative strategy across these different channels and managed to make it relevant within the App Store screenshot. I think another thing to note as well is that, these creatives really scale down on your phone. So you have to think about what it looks like within this very limited space and real estate.
On a random question, do we do Remitly's app stuff?
We don't, but they're a gold standard for ASO, I will say.
Yeah, I was one of their first investors. I know the
Oh,
CEO
really?
and I know both the co-founders really well.
Amazing.
You should hit me up. I can always do an introduction if you guys want.
Yeah. Great.
Great guys, good company.
Yeah, and I think, this leads quite well into how strategic they are with their A/B testing at the moment. So I mentioned, having that baseline when it comes to really starting off your creative strategy informed by data across different departments. But the good thing is on the app stores is that you have the ability to natively A/B test your creatives directly within the consoles on both iOS and Android. And we highly, highly recommend that you leverage these tools to start to get those incremental gains in conversion. And we have quite a good structure at Yodel in terms of how we lead our A/B testing strategy. And it's a very hypothesis-led A/B testing strategy. So start off with a hypothesis, take some of those questions and maybe hypotheses that have come from, your other creative learnings and channels and build out a testing roadmap. We tend to test in two different kind of silos. One is value proposition, so more around the copy and how you're putting forward the value of the product, and the other being the creative method, so the imagery, colors, font weight, and hierarchy and things like that. Only test one thing at a time. You don't want to test the cross value propositions and creative methods, and then you get a conversion rate uplift and you can't attribute at all what it was that drove that. So really do isolated testing here. And then once you see a winner against your control, take that winner and continue on your testing in a winner stays on approach. Great. The third tool in your arsenal that we highly recommend that you leverage, and Mick touched on this a little bit, is the custom landing pages. So just like web, you now have the ability to create custom versions of your app stores, both on iOS and Android, with bespoke icons, screenshots, even text-based elements of the listing. And on iOS, you can now have up to 70, they're called custom product pages on iOS, and up to 50 custom store listings on the Google Play Store. And again, as Mick mentioned, these historically have been used to connect to different campaigns that you're running from a user acquisition perspective, but you can now also create custom landing pages for organic keyword searches. So there's so much value, and Babbel is quite a good example here on the left, where you can create a listing that's much more relevant to that first key search term. So obviously Babbel covers lots of different languages, but if someone is, searching to learn to speak Spanish, you want to make sure that you have Spanish specific store listings. And that's just, creating more consistency in the user journey and another conversion rate lever that you can leverage as part of your ASO strategy. So here, really what we want to do is cross-collaborate with the creative department. We want to work with your UA team as well, and with the broader marketing team to make sure if we have specific campaigns driving traffic to your App Store listing, that we create bespoke listings that correlate with those campaigns. And some, I guess, best practice to really consider here is really tailor those listings specifically to audience segments. I think Q4 is probably one of the key periods within the year to leverage custom store listings and custom product pages. If you're running Black Friday campaigns or anything around the holiday season, and you've got creative and campaigns specifically related to that, you can then update and refresh your screenshots to also reflect Black Friday style App Store assets, and also highlight that you've got new and fresh content with the season. This will just support you in driving more in-store volume and get users through that funnel to a more relevant and personalized user experience. Great. Another area that is a really great opportunity, and I think heavily underutilized within the app space, are in-app events. And for those who don't know what in-app events are, there is a few examples there on the screen of different in-app events on the Today tab, Apps tab, and on Browse. They are essentially content cards that have its own imagery, it has its own metadata, and they tend to run for a couple of weeks in the App Store. There's also, just to say, a version on the Google Play Store called promotional content. However, not every app developer will have access to promotional content. You need to reach a certain threshold in terms of revenue and install velocity to be able to leverage those. But on the App Store on iOS, anyone can run an in-app event, and you can run up to 5 at a time. And it essentially just extends your presence outside of just your App Store listing and keyword visibility into different parts of the App Store. The App Store, and Neil covered this, there is more engagement currently and more time spent within the App Store because it is moving to a much more editorial environment. You can see those with the Today tab showing different developer stories, curated lists, and so on. And the in-app events are another kind of tool to support you in creating that kind of editorial environment and marketing approach as part of your ASO. So the way that these can be leveraged are if you're running things like promotions, maybe you're doing a launch of a particular feature within your app, maybe there's new and fresh content that you're running. Those are great opportunities to submit an in-app event to the App Store. So really align here with your product team and your content team to see what the content calendar looks like for the rest of the year and how we can work together to make sure that you are leveraging in-app events at core parts of the calendar to really boost impression volume. So you boost impressions, conversions, brand awareness. We actually recently ran an in-app event for a client that had revenue associated to it in tens of thousands of dollars because it connected to a part of their subscription funnel. So this isn't just about building awareness. You can actually attribute revenue directly to these in-app events. They're super, super powerful. And if leveraged well, they can also be the key to unlocking featuring opportunities in the App Store. So of course, Apple wants to highlight apps who are leveraging all the different tools that they are really promoting within the App Stores at the moment. So do what you can on the in-app event side. And also, it's a little bit more, I guess, of a democratic process at the moment to be able to submit an App Store feature request. Before, it was all about having the right types of contacts in the Apple editorial team, but now you can go directly to your console and submit for a feature, which is great. Doesn't make it any easier, though. I will say it's become super competitive. So you need to have the best possible chances to be able to get a successful feature. And there are a few things that you can do here. Firstly, your ASO needs to be top notch. You need to have that high rating. You need to be updating regularly. You need to be collaborating with your developers to understand if there are opportunities for you to tell a really good story and build that really compelling narrative as part of your submission. And so I guess one of our tactics is using that in-app event to be at the center of your featuring submission. That normally supports you really well in terms of telling a story. And then if successful, that in-app event will get a boost and start to appear within other parts of the App Store. Another thing to really consider here is Apple has quite strong values as a business that they've written down and that are kind of promoted as part of their wider business. If you can speak to those values within your submission, or even talk about how you're working in Apple features, like maybe a liquid glass UI incorporation into your product, that will also help you in getting on their radar and getting that submission feature, hopefully being successful. You can get a boost in impressions in the millions if you have a successful feature. And then the final point I want to hone down is, and I know that this exists both on web and in the app stores, but really having synergy across your ASO, but also your paid activity is super, super essential, especially if a lot of that paid activity is around keyword bidding. So in the app store specifically, we can run Apple search ads for particular keyword bids. And if you have a more synergistic approach between the two, you can really drive a halo effect between both sides of the coin from an organic perspective and a paid perspective. And I'm going to show you maybe a few use cases where this can be leveraged in the next slide. So let's say that you are on the ASO team and you're really struggling to boost ranking for specific keywords that are really valuable to you. And I think a good example actually is we have been working with a lot of launch clients recently who have quite unique names that aren't actually legitimate words in the dictionary. So when users search for them in the App Store auto-corrects them, and then there is no way for them to actually bring any traffic to their brand name. If that is something you're struggling with, put that keyword into your Apple search ad strategy, start bidding on it, because as you start to see a boost in conversion rate, you will have a halo effect on your organic as well. Similarly, on the other side of the coin, if you have a high keyword cost per install, and you're really struggling to maintain the amount of budget associated with driving traffic to that install or to that particular keyword, assess the efficiency of the keyword from an organic perspective and start to incorporate it into your ASO strategy. It might be a longer term play, but over time, if you can start to build a bit more authority with that keyword, then you can start to decrease some of your reliance from a paid perspective, or it can start to reduce that cost per install from a blended perspective as well. And then finally, similarly, if you have a high tap through keyword from ASA, think about whether it's worth starting to transfer that into your ASO strategy and start to wind down some of that budget associated with that keyword so you're not cannibalizing, just like we were talking about earlier.
Oh, brilliant! Thanks, Sue. I've been in this business for so long, the app space, and I don't think I've seen a time that is where it's moving as fast as it is now. There's so much development in the space, so much competition that I talked about, but also a lot of the tools, Apple and Android are bringing out pretty much something new every week, every month. So there's a lot to play around with, but the most important thing that we've not touched on at this point is AI.
That's right.
Yeah, and it is also redefining the way that apps are actually getting discovered. So just 3 quick snapshots here. For Android, what's starting to happen now is they're pulling through the FAQs from the website into the App Store listing. And incredibly, you can actually utilize Gemini to actually ask questions within the App Store environment. Apple are also consolidating reviews and ratings, and they're actually doing, they're taking some of the top best reviews and they're taking some of the smallest, the lower reviews, and they're merging the two. So you can actually go in there and get a snapshot rating. And also in Android, app highlights are actually getting pulled through by Google AI now. So you're getting a summary. So, and this is just the start of it. And one thing that we strongly believe, and it'd be great to hear what your thoughts are on this, Neil, but you know, LMMs and ChatGPT, they are just starting now to be a big discovery engine for mobile apps. That will only increase, and I'm very excited to see what's going to be happening in that space.
Yeah, I think they're going to end up getting into all sectors, from showcasing social content more to showcasing apps. I think they just want everyone to live in their ecosystem, just like you would live in other people's ecosystems like Google, etc. The one interesting thing, though, that all platforms are really moving to, but ChatGPT has been this way for a very long time. They're trying to keep people within their ecosystem more than pushing them out, right? So I still do believe that they're going to be a great source for discovery for apps. I think they're going to want, ideally, apps to be integrated within ChatGPT and people to use it through there. It doesn't work for all types of apps, but if you look at everything they're doing, they're trying to keep people on their platform, from what I see, more aggressively than a lot of the other players. So, all right, let's wrap this up and then we can get into some Q&A. So, key takeaways. Look, you guys know that paid and organic is the way to go. App Store optimization is definitely important for businesses. If you don't have an app, you should consider creating an app. I didn't say that you should, no matter what, create an app. I said you should consider, because for some businesses, it doesn't make sense. Like for us at NP Digital, being a marketing agency, we don't need an app for a marketing agency. Maybe we should have an app for Answer the Public or Uber Suggest or things like that, right? But an ad agency, specifically for us, an app wouldn't be as relevant. And AI and personalization are going to redefine a lot of how discovery is happening within the space. So a lot of it's yet to be seen, but we'll see more of it over the up and coming years. Now, if you want to skyrocket your App Store growth, or you just need help with any form of digital marketing, scan that QR code. It'll take you to our site. You can fill out the information, and we can get you a complimentary ASO audit or audit of your website or whatever it may be, your ads. It doesn't have to be app-centric, but it could be on anything. All right, Colin, let's get into some Q&A.
Let's get into some Q&A. Great stuff, y'all. Neil, you may have kind of answered the first question that was asked a couple of different times, but I'd like to hear from Mick and Zoo. Do you think having an app and having visibility for that app builds general brand credibility? I mean, if it makes sense for your company to have one, I guess that's sort of what Neil touched on originally, but if you don't have one, are you less credible? If you do have one and you should have one, are you more credible? Just any thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, Colin, I mean, you know, it's a great question. And the fact is, if you want to build a relationship with your consumers in a safe, structured environment, but you're also prepared to invest, because it's not inexpensive to build an app and continually maintain it and continue to promote it. So there's a real benefit to having an app, but don't build an app for app's sake. And there are a ton of businesses out there that we speak to that have an app, and you can't see the point of why they've actually done that, or they're not prepared to invest and support that app, and therefore the customers are having a very poor experience. It's got to be top notch. We talked about that today. The product, the quality. Do it if you have if you're looking to build a relationship, but also if you have the resource to actually support it.
Yeah, like e-com, great example. Another great example for apps is like entertainment. Like you look at my screen, I have Netflix, Apple TV, YouTube, Paramount, Disney, Hulu, Prime TV, HBO, Peacock. The list goes on, right? But like there's some categories where it just makes sense. E-com is another huge one. Service-based industries like consultants, accountants. You know, if you're like a provider, you probably don't need an app. But if you're Angie's List, right? An app could be very useful where someone can just go anytime, point where they have a problem, and go find a vendor, similar to Uber. So it just really varies on the industry you're in.
Totally. So Zoo, got one for you. A lot of search marketers attend these webinars, and a lot of like search related questions. So I'm hoping to dig in a little bit there. Marketers have been using search volume or Google Keyword Planner to help guide their optimization strategy basically since SEO started. Overture way back when, and then Google Keyword Planner now maybe. Is that volume data available for searches within the app stores? And if not, how do you determine the best queries to target?
Yeah, really good question. So yes, in a nutshell, it is. There are lots of ASO tools out there in the space that give you that search popularity score, how it changes over time in relation to seasonality, keyword efficiency, keyword opportunity, competitiveness. So all of that are super important metrics that you can access through different tooling. We've referenced AppTweak a few times in this deck in terms of pulling some of their data sources. They are a tool that you can leverage for that type of data. But we would also recommend broadening out and really looking at different data sources alongside a research tool like that. So incorporate what you can from SEO as well. Look at things like the App Store auto suggestions. They're also quite an interesting insight into what users are looking for, and incorporate that into your keyword strategy. And then also even look at things like YouTube searches. Try to be a little bit more holistic, but that specific App Store search volume does exist within ASO specific tools.
And why I have you. So with Google paid search, there's match types. There's like broad match, exact match. Is it sort of the same thing within the Google Play Store? Like, how do you explain just a little bit more about, match types, if that's available in Google, if Apple sort of like adopted the same thing?
Yeah.
I know that's more of a paid thing, but there were questions about that as well.
Yeah. So from an Apple perspective, we have Apple search ads. And again, you get a huge amount of data in a very similar vein. So I think expect that you can access very similar data from a web perspective or a paid perspective on the app stores as well. So yes, there are metrics that you can look at. And I think we have a good few blogs that I'm more than happy to share after this in terms of the specifics of exactly what you can access. But yes, you will have a plethora of data available through the paid channels as well on app.
Plethora. I love that word. Three Amigos, the movie. Do you know what a plethora is? All right. So Mick and Zoo, maybe you can kind of tag team this, or I don't know, Zoo, you might be the best one to answer this. So again, similar to organic and search, we've got Google and you've got Bing and you've got the other engines. Like, what's different as far as your ASO strategy when it comes to the algorithm? And this is organic now. Like, we talked a lot about reviews. I know like the name or the title of the app, like all of those things play a role, but are they pretty similar? Like if you do one for the App Store, does it kind of work for Play and vice versa? If you could give a little insight into that, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Shall I kick this one off? Yeah. So I think first and foremostly, each platform actually needs a tailored ASO approach. So both have unique search algorithms, and there are different factors that actually weigh in on the indexing. So iOS relies on title, subtitle, and keyword field, whereas Android really indexes everything on the App Store listing. There's other things to think about, which we kind of touched on today as well, is things like your ANRs, so your crash rates. That's really important to keep an eye on, especially in Google, on the Google Play Store. They can have a massive impact on that, and obviously the algorithms pick that up, and as a consequence of that, you can lose a huge amount of audience because of it. And I think also just think about the creative assets. They impact your conversion, not your rankings, but very much your conversion. So the Android user is typically different to the Apple user, and as a consequence, make sure that the quality of your designs reflect the environment that they're going to be seen in those two operating systems.
Yeah. And I just want to add to, I guess, the specific keyword approach that you take on iOS versus Android. So as Mick mentioned, you have a lot more text to optimize on Google because the full long description gets indexed by the Google algorithm. And Google has really moved away from keyword stuffing and I guess being a little bit too overt about what it is you're trying to rank for. So instead, the algorithm has moved more towards what they call a Google natural language kind of approach and assessment. So they really look at how, I guess, naturally, which is quite ironic because there's an AI really scanning the text and making that assessment, how naturally you're starting to lean towards particular categories. So we have tools that we leverage to help us produce that long description and then assess what Google is reading and categorizing that text as, because those categories then tend to correlate with the keywords that you become visible for and unlock. Whereas on iOS, the long description is not indexed. It's mainly the backend keywords, title and subtitle. So much less real estate and character count. And so you have to be a little bit more strategic in how you're leveraging those keywords and think about how some of those keywords can join together to form long tail keywords. So really and truly, you do need a different approach for optimizing on iOS versus Android.
Awesome. So Zoo, more questions here, I think probably for you. How do Google and Apple and the algorithms treat newly launched apps? So I think that there's a lot of folks attending this webinar that maybe don't have apps and they're thinking about that. And there's also a lot of search nerds on here. I'm one myself. So like typically websites that have more authority, that have been around a long time, have more people pointing to them. They've had longer to establish credibility. So therefore they tend to do better, specifically for non-branded type queries. Assuming the App Store might be the same way, right? So like if reviews play such a heavy role and you're brand new, like are you kind of waiting around for a little while until you garner some good reviews and you get that credibility? And assuming the answer might be yes to some of these questions, you know, what are some of the strategies that you would recommend for a newly launched app to get the visibility? Is it a paid amplification while you kind of wait to get the organic visibility? Any thoughts or insights into that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Mick, I see maybe you want to add something to
Just
this.
chomping at the bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremostly, Apple gives a boost for the first sort of 5 to 7 days when the app is launched. It gives you that visibility boost. So making sure that you've got a really strong ASO launch strategy is absolutely critical at that point, because you've got to capitalize on that initial boost. However, our friends at Google give little to no algorithmic support to any new apps. So you're kind of on your own, but external traffic is also really important for Google Play. So they pull that information in. So I guess for our search nerds within the audience today, you know, pulling through some of the skills that you've got will definitely have an impact, certainly in the Android store. I think you know, the good thing to think about is that ASO actually helps convert the traffic and sustains that ranking momentum. So even if you're not going to get that additional boost beyond those 7 days from Apple, having that momentum in place and making sure that you're actually updating regularly and changing the imagery and your keywords is going to be absolutely essential for the first sort of month or two. That's me, Zoo. Have you got stuff? I bet you do.
I think you covered that beautifully, Mick.
One last one, even though we're at time, because there were a couple about local. So again, lots of search folks, you know, for search, we've got Search Console where you can kind of, you know, target your website or sections of your website to particular, you know, countries or locations. Like, how does that work for the App Store? Like if you only have products or services for, let's just say the UK, like how do you make sure that you're only getting the visibility within that market? Because that's where it's most relevant.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that it's a pretty straightforward process to start your localization journey within the app stores. So you can set your product to be live within a particular market and to not appear within another market. So if you have a UK-based product and you don't want to appear in the US, for example, that's absolutely fine. Just set your listing to the UK and make sure it's not discoverable in other parts of the world. If you have a global app, then you set it global and it will appear within every market. But the key thing is that you can have different listings for all these different markets that have its own metadata, creative. So it's really important to localize, culturalize, and make it very specific to that market that you're catering to, including even the search trends and keywords that you're incorporating into your app store listings. So yes, you can ring fence only on a country and language level, though. You can't go to like a city level, for example.
Yep. Amazing.
Cool. Well, that's it for time. Thank you, everyone. If you guys need help with your marketing, check us out at NP Digital. Cheers.
Good job, everyone. Cheers.